Oi, oi, all right, how's it going? I'm Grant, you're you. This is the Doodle Review coming through with a new episode of Ulterior Underground. It has been a while, but I haven't forgotten about this series and I'm back today with a great one. Today, we're interviewing Brian Lee Brown. He was a member of Bluebird, he was a member of Halloy. He's worked on his own solo material as a composer for film and TV, but most importantly, and what we're here to talk about today, is his work under the project name Dark Brown. Last year, he released an incredible album called American Instrument, which is a sort of psychedelic instrumental trip through desert rock. There's elements of jazz, and there's a lot of drums in there, which I'm not going to talk about now. We talk about a lot about in the interview. But if you're a fan of any of that sort of music that I mentioned, and also if you're a fan of bands like Queens of the Stone Age, there's so many family members from that whole organization featured on the album that I think you're really going to love. So check it out. If you want to see my review of the album, then subscribe to my newsletter and I'll send it to you. And I will also send you a private playlist and a free print if you're interested as well. So go ahead, check that out. But obviously, not until you've watched this interview. It was one of my favorites that I've done. Brian is an absolute stand-up guy for doing this, giving up some time. It was a really great conversation. He was just so full of insight and so happy to talk. And so, yeah, I'm really grateful for his time and grateful that I get to share it with you guys. Hope you really enjoy it. Check it out. American Instrument, great album. One of my favorite kind of discoveries that I kind of stumbled upon last year. And when I was kind of like reading into it, so always like to kind of keep a kind of ongoing journal of reviews of stuff that I listened to, and I always kind of like look at the backstory, and this had a particularly interesting one. So
Yeah,
I'll add to that obviously the incredible list of other musicians you were able to bring along for the ride. I thought it would be really cool to hear from you. So thanks for taking some time.
of course. No, I'm happy to talk about it. It's fun.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to obviously chat to you about the album itself. But before we get there, maybe a bit of background on you, if that's cool.
Yeah, whatever you
Um,
want, man.
so, I mean, I'm obviously kind of having done some of my, internet homework, not had the chance to listen to everything, but obviously can sort of see that, you've kind of had a number of projects over the years, like Bluebird, the Halloys, your composing work, obviously Dark Brown itself. But how
Yeah.
did you kind of get into like music professionally to begin with?
Uh, Professionally, I started playing when I was like 6. Uh, my mom just sort of noticed I was typical hyperactive boy, and my parents are journalists and photographers, and so and my mom was pretty progressive as far as like her parenting. Um, a lot of holistic stuff in the 70s and just things that weren't really being practiced, but I knew that she knew that I needed some sort of outlet. So I studied and started playing music from a young age, and then I did 1 year at a university on a scholarship, and then it's kind of a crazy story. It's a long story. Maybe we'll get into it later, but I just knew that I basically, when I graduated from high school, I know I either wanted to go to New York to just probably pursue jazz or go to LA and just try to make a band. So I did a year to appease them, and then I jumped to LA and then just started. I landed here, and it was before the internet, so you just pick up the LA Weekly or the Recycler and start looking through the ads in the back to try to meet people. And again, a few things happened that were very cosmic that let me know I was in the right spot. But yeah, I met a lot of people in those first few years, people that I still have relationships with now, and started touring and did Bluebird with my brother. And yeah, and then Bluebird was kind of, we had these atmospheric components to the live set, and there was a label in Boston called Dopamine, and they contacted us and wanted us to do an album of that kind of stuff. And the singer of Bluebird, Sam Velde, had told me, let's do that, and you're gonna record it and produce it. And I was like, I don't know how to do any of that. So uh, it just kind of forced me into it, and it was a really great experience and very liberating. And at the time, when you're a band and you live in Los Angeles, I'm sure it's probably the same as New York or London or any other major city. But the entertainment thing, every year or two, there would be lunches or showcases with record labels and stuff like that. But our band never really clicked with anything. That people didn't know how to market us. I think we are probably kind of an inconsistent band too. We put out a lot of records, but they weren't. They were always different and changing. But that record wasn't. We weren't really chasing anything, and that I produced that record, and it ended up getting a fair amount of placement for TV and film. And so at that point, it was just sort of like one of those things where I started to go into that that route of kind of thinking about applying music to visuals. I also worked and went to school at an art school where I was a projectionist for a long time. So I would just all day long I would be watching Kubrick or Fellini or Godard or Hitchcock, anything, and I was really just taking all that in. And so it was just kind of a natural progression. And then you just chip away at it, anything from, action sports to whatever. And yeah,
Yeah, I was I
I'm
was looking
still,
at your list of credits. Like this, it's so varied in terms of the film and TV stuff,
yeah,
which must keep it fun for you.
yeah, it's fun. I mean, sometimes it's work and sometimes it's really fun, but I'm blessed to be to have clean water and a roof over my head and a place to sleep every night. And
Mhm.
it could be, whenever I have a gig that I'm not really that happy about, I just try to take a step back and think about really what my life, consists of. And so I'm very lucky.
Yeah, man. I think I think whatever walk of life or whatever profession you find yourself in, there's always those moments where you got to have that element of gratitude, right? And just kind of when maybe
Always,
it's not.
especially, I mean, yeah, I mean, they're literally, not to get too heavy, but there's people without water and without healthcare and without food. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
complaining about my operating system's not working really isn't, it's not really that productive for me.
100%. 100%. And well, I can't, like I say, I don't want to kind of like kind of say that I've listened to everything that you've done, but I really enjoyed what I heard of kind of like Bluebird
Oh,
today,
cool.
kind of
Thanks.
like in the backstory. And I think it is really interesting how you say, kind of like it never quite found that home, for placement and like more mainstream success, because I feel like, so if you're into like alternative rock or like, anything from like Queens of the Stone Age around that region, I feel like Bluebird's really gonna kind of like it's gonna be a great project to stumble upon. Like I'm quite looking forward to kind of like checking out
Cool.
the whole back catalogue. But what
Yeah,
I was
no, it was sorry to interrupt. I was to say it was just it was kind of all over the place, which is a good and a bad thing, but I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
but to in the transition from Bluebird to the Holloys,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
which is obviously is much more rhythmic and groove and even like maybe dance orientated from what I heard. Like
for sure.
what kind of inspired that
That's
shift?
all. That's all. My brother, Jim Brown, the bass player. He was the bass player in Bluebird. He's extremely creative person. He's a visual artist. He paints. He writes. He's a wildly creative person, and that was really his thing.
Mm.
Um, I think Bluebird. There was just a lot of different ideas. People wanted to accomplish different things, and it just sort of we never broke up. It just sort of stopped, and I did a just a straight rock thing for fun that was like that wasn't it was just really it was just for fun so I could play shows and play covers and my brother went that route. He loves you know Afro funk, Afrobeat, Fela Kuti. So yeah, he that was really his thing and I kind of resisted for a long time. We lived together in a house, and he would always have different people, and he kept nagging at me to play with him. And I loved the music, but I just needed some separation, and finally I jumped into it. But Yeah, hollows is super cool. Double bass, double drums. It went through a lot of incarnations. Sometimes it would just be a three piece. Sometimes there'd be like, I think seven people were the most people.
Well,
But that one was we toured Europe, I think three times. I did three tours with him. He did more, but it was one of those kind of projects where we could play in a club and people immediately started dancing.
you
We
get it
played a
straight
show
away.
yeah, it
It's
was just like
infectious.
I don't know, there was kind of like this weird universal groove to it, and I've been in a lot of bands where you clear the room, where you start playing and start doing your thing, and people are
Yeah.
like, "No, fuck this, I'm not into this," and you clear the room, and that's a good thing and a bad thing, because
Mhm.
it means you're again, it's like it doesn't really feel that great, but at the same time, it's sort of it comes with the territory. But yeah, Hollis was it's a cool thing, you know. He's got a new thing now called Coyotes on Peyote.
Oh,
It's
cool.
similar similar thought process. The music's different, but it's all my brother. Yeah,
Oh, awesome. Creative family in general then.
yeah.
Right on. And what I was going to say, again, not having listened to the whole catalog, but some of what I listened to kind of reminded me of Battles. I feel
Oh
like
yeah,
if people were into that project, it would be another good kind of lane to go down would be to check out Hollows.
yeah. We played a show with Battles. John's a really good friend. We met John. Bluebird opened some shows for Helmet.
Mhm.
And John and Ian, they're great. I mean, all the different versions of Battles are amazing. That's a different. They're consistent. Their shows are consistent. What they sound like every night is consistent. Their thought process is consistent, which is something that I really admire, and I haven't really been that disciplined. You know, yeah, Battles are they're top level for me, as far as artists go.
Yeah, great band, and
Yeah.
obviously that comes full circle with American Instrument, and I guess I'd love to talk a little bit about the kind of theme and inspiration of this, because as I say, when I kind of like read up about it, it was what initially prompted me to kind of reach out. Because in the kind of blurb, I guess that you put out there is that the inspiration was that this idea that the drum set is what you would consider a true like American instrument, and I just wondered if you could maybe speak a little bit more to that. Like, was it an idea that you'd had for a long time, or is this something that was
It,
like an
yeah,
epiphany moment? Or
it was there for a long time, but it's sort of like I was sitting there and I was actually setting up my kit one day and I was looking at it, and I was kind of just marveling in the invention of it. I mean, it it's still sometimes when I look at it, I've never been one of those drummers that knows all the aspect of how many plies and the history of each manufacturer, and I just if it sounds cool and it looks cool, I like it. But yeah, I was looking at it and I was like, wow, this is a wildly unique instrument. And uh, historically speaking, in the kit being invented in America. And then I was just toying around with the concept of American instrument and the duality of that and the positive and negative. You can go deep if you want. You can take that in many different ways, but an instrument of destruction, an instrument of creativity. I mean, blue jeans. Every country is famous for what they did, but I thought it was really cool that this instrument that really, and I don't know, I can't speak for everybody else, but for me falling in love and being good at something when you're a young kid, it gives you a sense of identity and purpose, and particularly music. It's not necessarily competitive. I remember dropping out of sports because I was just playing music, and it just it's like this friend that I had my whole life. Like the drum set is just this. It's very hard to describe. Anyways, and then with even the term America, again, I don't want to get political, but you know, there were native people that lived here before. There's people that lived everywhere before somebody else lived there. Um, so I was trying to walk a fine line of like not speaking for somebody else, but also paying, my respects to the, drummers of First Nations that were here before myself. And it's all just really, I mean, it's about rhythm basically, and the art of rhythm. Uh, but yeah, so then being a drummer and having a lot of friends that are drummers, and I usually always play drums on my recordings just because it's easy. I thought, oh, it'd be cool to get, friends to play on the album, which ended up kind of biting me in the ass because, I think John Stanier he was in town a few times, but he was on tour, so he just wouldn't have time, and it would take me a couple of years to pin a friend down, even people that lived in town, hey, let's do it next month. Shit, this came up. Hey, let's do it, in 3 months that came up. But yeah, the concept American Instrument really uh, it's near and dear. And I didn't want it to be like a drum clinic album, where it was where dudes it's more conceptual. So I think you kind of understood the premise where I was coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all to your credit. Like it really, I see what you mean in the sense that if I went to someone and was like, "Hey, you should check out this drum album that features like, a dozen drummers and it's like mainly instrumental," I think people might kind of most
Sure.
people might sway away from that. But that's not what the album is to me. Like and I feel what you have done really well beyond just the exploration of like rhythm and obviously how cool it is to hear all these different players is this idea of like some of the soundscapes that you've kind of created really do to me even as a kind of foreigner speak to a or conjure that image of like the American kind of um landscape
Yeah.
and you can kind of listen as passively or actively as you want through the album without and you've alluded to it, and I respect like kind of not wanting to be political or whatever. But what I think is cool is that you don't have to put any of this into words because I think it's kind of implicit in both the title and then the music that you hear. So I think it's really, really cool.
Cool. Yeah,
Um,
no, you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like I always tell people it's music to listen to when not listening. And I have so many people whose opinions I respect, friends, artists, just friends that, hey man, I listen to your record every day on the tube, on the subway when I go to work, while I'm just kind of doing my stuff. And to me, it's like it's a really great, it's the best compliment. It's not intended to sit there and listen to intently. It's just it's there in your subconscious. And the other thing that I wanted to create with a lot of that music is growing up and playing in jazz bands and concert bands and stuff. The instrumental music is unique to each listener. Each listener has their own version of what that piece of music is about. It's unique to them and their experience, and it could be when they first hear it, or it could be different every time. But because the the tracks that there are lyrics on, they're affected. So it's not a direct line to your consciousness and you're thinking about the lyric. And the example I always give is I played Duke Ellington's A Train. I can't tell you how many times I played it, but the sax or the trumpet section were always playing the melody. And then I think when I was probably about 20 or 21, I heard Ella Fitzgerald's version of Take the A Train. And I was like, wow, there's lyrics to this song, like just ignorant, basically. I didn't know. I didn't play with a lot of jazz vocalists growing up, but it was one of those moments where I was like, wow, I always, it was completely different. And so instrumental music, I love that about instrumental music. It's not for everybody. Some people need lyrics to pull them in. Um, there's songs that I've listened to since I was a kid where I probably still don't know what they're saying because it's not really what I gravitate towards.
yeah, agreed. I've actually always had that as like as what one of the reasons what that I find hip hop so fun but also challenging to review is that my natural ear, I don't listen to lyrics. I listen to the music, and so it's always funny when I'm like in a car with my girlfriend, and she's got like a crazy ability to just pick up song lyrics, and she'll be singing along, and I'll be like, it'll be a song that I've known for years, and I just won't have picked up because I'm always straight to the melody or the rhythm or whatever. So
Yeah,
it's kind of,
yeah,
you know, changes your relationship to stuff,
yeah, for
to the
sure.
sounds. I wondered,
Yeah.
you spoke, you mentioned before in this call as well, but that kind of your music kind of journey started really early on, and it was, I think, from what I've read, like seeing drummers play that kind of like lit that fire for you. Are there any specific performances or albums or players that come to mind when you think of that kind of like inspiration over the years?
Well, the first time that my mom was like, "Hey, do you want to play drums?" And I said, "Sure," but I didn't really know what that was. So she took me to this. It was an open. I grew up in Arizona, in the desert, in the Sonoran Desert. I grew up in Phoenix. It was like a drum workshop. So when we got there, I remember I could hear and feel the drums inside. There were people playing drums, and I could hear it coming through the walls, and it was intimidating, but really exciting. And it's like when you open the door to a club and there's that sound that happens. You come in there and you feel the movement of the air. And I remember I came in and I could feel the kick drum in my chest. And there was a girl playing. I later asked my instructor about that, but she was playing and I just sat down in front of her and all four limbs were playing and it just looked fucking insane to me. I was like, what the hell's happening? But she was in control of everything. And that was the first time I ever saw somebody play a drum set. And it left it like just a very lasting impression. And I was lucky. His name is Jim Zupanzik. He's a great music educator, a great human being. And I still talk to him. I reconnected with him at my mom's memorial service a few years ago. He showed up. It was really cool. And
Oh, nice.
he would put on these really cool drum clinics where he just wanted to turn people on to music. And so the first ones I remember were Louis Belson, and he was just a very giving, nurturing person, always happy to talk to people. And over the years, I would, he would be in Arizona, and I would, hang out and talk with him. The last time I saw him, I think, was at a Zildjian Day, like here in LA, and I didn't want to nerd out on him too much, but I let him know, what an impression he made on me. He was always happy to talk to me about anything. Such a cool person. Steve Smith, he was another guy that sort of was really influential. He was friends with Jeff Hamilton, another jazz drummer. There's just a lot of people always around that took the time just to talk to people and help them out. But the thing about Louis that was really cool, I remember talking to him once in Sedona, and I was kind of conflicted about my path forward for what I wanted to do. I was sort of like, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and he just took me on a little nature walk and said, what you should play whatever makes you happy. If you want to play in your room, you should play in your room, and if you want to play rock and roll, you should play rock and roll. I remember he was like, "Do you ever listen to Alex Van Halen?" I was like, "Yeah," and he's like, "He's great. You should if you want to be like that." But he's like, "Don't play for anybody but yourself." And so, honestly, that always stuck with me, and that was another inspiration for American Instrument. The first track that I recorded was sort of inspired by that conversation with him. Um, and I didn't really set out to do anything. I just sort of played drums for about 10 minutes and tracked it and then just started layering ideas on top of it. I wasn't really going for any one specific genre or trying to chase any kind of template.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. I love the backstory to that, and what great advice to be given as well. And that does, I did want to ask you about the kind of writing process with the tracks, especially when you're kind of managing a lot of different artists. And I wondered if you're, did you have like a consistent approach to how you would kind of take a track and pick it for someone you wanted to invite on? Like, was there an idea, or did you jam out something, or did you vary it depending on the
I originally
nature of the person?
what I wanted to do originally was just to sit down with each guest artist and have them play, and then I would extract what I wanted from there. We would work on something together. What
Mm,
ended up happening is most people would say, "What do you want me to play on?" So most people were waiting for me to bring in a track or a piece of music or an idea, something already. I think it's easier for a lot of people. Um, so most of the tracks, I would have a template or I would have some sort of foundation already there. The John Stanier piece, actually, I made an arrangement. I had a few parts. Um, he wasn't totally, he kept saying like I'm not really the jam guy. He's very methodical. He works out a lot of his parts, but there's that breakdown section where he just sort of he got on his own trip, and he went deep, and it was awesome, and I was able to edit a lot of that stuff and cut it out. It's like a wildly unique piece of music, I think, especially as far as the drum set goes. I was really happy with that, but I finished that track and then I sent it to him, and I could tell, I know John really well. He's a really great friend. He wasn't he wasn't really that blown away. When you send it to somebody, you wanted to be like, it sounds fucking great. He was like, yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And I was like, well, I want you to like it. I want you to love it. And he was like, yeah, it's cool. So I just completely I rewrote the track. I kept his drums, but then I think I kept this arpeggiator that I had in there, this sort of krautrock arpeggiator that I had going in the background,
mhm.
and I just stripped everything back down and then rewrote the track kind of um, around the fact that I could tell he wasn't really that pumped on it when I sent it to him. Maybe I'm projecting or reaching, but that was a case in point. The Dig Dale track too, like the track that I brought in for him to play on. Um, it sounded totally different. It doesn't sound anything like what it finished. And same thing. It was like a little bit understated and mellower. And then after listening to his guitars, same thing. I reworked the track, and it ended up serving me well that way.
That's cool though, because I mean that's still a form of, like collaboration and almost like following your kind of instinct on the track. And whether or not it's based on a real reaction or something that you're projecting, it's there's something there that you're kind of like following to change it. And I think that's really interesting. Probably be interesting to hear what those earlier versions sound
Yeah,
like by comparison.
maybe I'll put out, the original versions of them sometime. I don't think they're as strong as far as pieces of music go, from point A to point B. And like John's track it just ended up being almost 10 minutes long because that's where it kind of wanted to go.
Yeah,
Um,
awesome. Can I
yeah,
ask you a really specific question about one of
sure.
the tracks? My
Yeah, yeah.
favorite that started from first play. My favorite was probably Jose in the Hole, and that is the one I constantly go back to.
All right, yeah.
And I just wondered maybe if you could give a bit of insight on how that one came together, because that's very distinctive with the double bass,
Yeah.
um, and
So
which is the
I
foundation.
was playing. Jose was playing in Hollows. I met Jose really through my brother, but I'd met him at a drum shop that he used to work at in Hollywood.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, the track. I don't remember what I was listening to that day, but it was something that had some sort of Latin feel to it. There was some sort of like reggaeton or cumbia or something that I was listening to, and so it just kind of put me in that headspace, and I started with that bass line.
Mm.
Um, and then the shaker I put in, that it was just the bass line and the shaker for a long time. And Jose was up, he was living in Portland, so I needed something I wanted him to play just because he's an awesome drummer and a good friend, and he's been in the mix. And the rehearsal studio that we have underneath the house, it's a California basement. It's really small. We call it the hole. My brother built it out, and it was just dirt and rock when we moved in there, and he built it out. It's really tiny, but it's just like a workroom. And so we tracked Paul Figueroa, great engineer, mixer, guitar player. He was in Bluebird. He co-produced everything with me, and he was right there. And so we would have the drums downstairs, and it's just like a 1940s Spanish LA home, and you couldn't see him, and he would just be down there. And so yeah, his flavor and same thing. I had a basic outline, and then Jose tracked his parts, and then I think Eric McFadden really put that track like it, he he just like crushed it. He was in town one day, and I needed him to play on some stuff, some other session work that I had going on, and um, I just said, "Hey man, can you maybe do something staccato like Fela or something like that, and have it be kind of a clean tone?" And he was like this, and he just played it, and I was like, "Yes." And he did three passes, and I just comped it together, and then all those trumpets and stuff. It's my brother. He just has a really cool way of looping, and all of his trumpets with delay. It's inspired definitely by Miles, but it's its own thing. So again, just a process of layering ideas and trying to have a vague melody for the listener to latch onto, and then kind of wrap it all up again in the end.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. I love that track, and I think that is a great example of like the diversity on the of style on the record, because of course there's a lot that kind of leans into that kind of desert sound that I'm sure a lot of people that kind of enjoy that kind of genre will have gravitated towards the album for. But then you have a track like that, and it just kind of goes in this other direction, and yeah, I think it's such a cool
So,
combination of
so I
sounds.
have a question for you. So you say the desert sound. So you're talking about like sort of the desert rock sound, or are you talking about what you think, as someone who lives in a completely different environment, have you ever spent any time in any desert?
Only passing through, like I've done the drive from LA to Las Vegas, but not
Okay.
sadly not spent any time there. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I could be, misappropriating the term,
No,
but
you're not. No, you're not at all. I'm not saying it like attacking you. I'm actually inquisitive because growing up there, I have a different relationship with that space.
yeah, of course.
So I'm just curious is like I think it's cool that you feel that the music somehow is synonymous with that landscape. And I didn't know if you were just using that term, when people say krautrock, they're not talking about,
I
the
think
food, it's just like
it's like it's a nebulous term, isn't it? And I think there's a
yeah.
couple of different ways that I would interpret it. And I think American Instrument covers both of those areas, because you've got like there's like a psychedelic, spacious feeling to songs like, I think maybe Night Bloom, the intro would be a good example of that. That kind of feels like vast and open. But then
Right.
there's the kind of um interpretation of that would fall down more of like a genre specific thing, like stoner rock or desert rock, where
Yeah, for
you've
sure.
got some of those crunchier, groovier based, heavier things. I think the
Right.
album does both. um so it's kind of a catch-all term, but I do think that like when you get into the specifics, this album is great at kind of covering and straddling both of those types of things. And of course you've got guests who have got
Yeah, yeah.
lineage into that whole thing as well.
No, I love that. It's great. I mean, when it's funny because like when the desert rock thing started to become a phrase and stuff, to me, it's all just Sabbath.
Yeah,
It's
right.
all it's all Sabbath. It's just a derivative of Sabbath.
Hmm.
And then you can extrapolate on that what those guys were into, what led them to that. But that specific sound of those guitars, to me, it's Sabbath. And so I'll take all of it. I like it. But whenever, that kind of like stoner rock, all that stuff, it's, you don't want to, yeah, I don't want to generalize too much, but whenever I just kind of go when I even now when I hear a genre of music, it's like 3 points of like that was influenced by this, which was influenced by that, which is it started here, as
Yeah.
far as modern American music goes, to the 50s, we're talking like rock and roll.
Yeah, I mean, you could go deep on this topic for ages, right? Like how over categorization of music is more of a tool to kind of market and sell music than it is really to enjoy it. I do
Yeah.
find that it's helpful for me because I share your opinion, your viewpoint. You know, like every subgenre, you really can like, you know, like I was talking to a friend the other day. We were talking about like post-hardcore, and I was like, to me, like most of that sounds like what someone else could describe as grunge, like in a different thing, right? Like it's all just words that don't really are trying to describe this thing that's really quite a magical thing, which is music. But I suppose it's helpful for when you can't communicate via music, like to have the shared
Yeah.
reference points.
I mean, I
But
do. Everyone does it. I do it. I'm not, slagging anybody. I just, yeah,
no, but I think it's an interesting point because you get sometimes it can be helpful, but then other times it can take you away from like the actual point of the music, or even people maybe that themselves get into music and create music, they get so caught up in chasing like this definition of a word that they aren't like that they're missing out on something else. Like it's kind of this push pull between over categorizing and letting it be sort of thing.
yeah. I mean, if you told a 60-year-old, "Oh, my kid's really into R&B," and he'd be like, "Oh, cool. I
Yeah,
love
right.
that." And then when you play it for him and what he's listening to, what that person probably interprets as, as hip hop or something, or that's more modern, whether it's trap or whatever, they'd be like, "That's not R&B." It's like, well, that's what R&B is called now. That's what they call it. So it's
Yeah,
it's always like this thing that's in flux, and what one person calls something is, oh, like you said, post-punk. It's like when somebody say it's indie. I always thought indie was just meant like this genre of bands that were on independent labels and they kind of had this sound. It's like then it becomes an actual genre, like grunge.
yeah, yeah. It's kind
So
of crazy, and it's crazy how the two inform each other. Like I say, like the indie is a great example. In the UK, we had a whole scene in the 2000, like mid 2000s, and that's become like crystallized as a specific sound that some people start bands just to chase that sound, but it kind of came out of the back of
yeah,
shortening the word independent. Like
right.
it's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
um Interesting stuff. I mean, with regards to actually wanted to come back and talk about Dick Dale, because I think as much as the album has incredible collaborators from like, you know, the drum world and beyond. Dick Dale was the guy on the list that I've had to read like three times to be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, I've kind of read up and understand that you've got a bit of background there, which I'd love to hear about. But my specific question is that in your little documentaries that you were publishing via Instagram, I think you what I found really interesting was that you said that that Dick Dale that Dick had said that he doesn't like, you know, sit-ins or jams, or that he didn't really like that way of working. So I wondered, if someone says that to you, like how do you kind of like respond to that, or like cater to that while also creating an environment where you feel like you get some of that improvisational element from them?
Yeah. Well, again, playing with him for a long time, I knew he really just he was a real amazing person. So many levels to that guy, but he didn't really even consider himself a guitar player. Like if you would ask him, he had some other word for it or something like that. But literally a musical genius. I would watch him pick up a saxophone, a trumpet, or harmonica, piano, all self-taught. Stevie
Wild.
Wonder style, where they just pick up, they're just, yeah, it's fucking wild, is what it is. Like, you're like, wow, this guy is really a musical genius. And I'd asked him, I was kind of intimidated to ask him. I was like, hey, I'd love for you to play on this record, your first instrument with the drums. It's inspired by the drum set, but I'd love for you to play guitar and drums. And he was just like, whatever you want, man. He's like, you were always good to me. I'm happy to play on anything that you want. Let's work it out. And so, yeah, he was uncomfortable. Like a lot of the footage, obviously that I edited out. he at one point I was like, uh, how'd that feel? And he was like, the fuck would I know? I don't know what I'm doing. It's your track. But his instincts were so on spot. The first take that he did was just fucking just crushing. He just was channeling. I know it sounds cliche, but he was just channeling this higher power, and he ripped for like 5 minutes and just threw out. I mean, I could make 30 tracks off of the stuff that he played that day. It was mind blowing. Yeah, he did me a huge favor. Obviously not just by, guessing on the album because of his greatness. But that's really not his thing. Some people sit in all day long. Yeah, no problem. Like, what do you want me to play? What key is it in? He's not that guy, but because of he trusted me enough to do it. And it was actually, I mean, I still get upset when I think about it. I wanted to finish the track all the way before I let him hear it. And I know he would have loved it. And he passed before I got to play it for him. I knew he had been sick. I didn't know how far he was with his illness. And yeah, I was really upset that I couldn't play that for him because I know he just would have been totally pumped on it. Yeah, when I would play with him, he's probably one of the few players that when I would play, um, it was astonishing. His he was just channeling. I mean, I don't know how else to say it other than God or the universe or some other thing that was just going through him. But he was a complex guy. He was fun. I had a lot of fun hanging out with him.
Yeah, I had no idea before also that drums were his first instrument as well. So that was kind of a trip to see him playing
Yeah,
drums and contributing as well.
Gene Krupa was his guy. Again, all those early rock and roll dudes are all it all comes from the blues and jazz and all that. Those guys are, yeah, he loved Gene Krupa.
Awesome. And so, if you don't mind talking a little bit about like how you kind of first came to meet Dick Dale, I think that it would be really interesting to hear.
Yeah, it's in those little. I tried to do with those YouTube shorts or Instagram stuff, not make it too long because I mean, quite honestly, everyone's being pulled in 1,000 different directions. Everyone has their own shit that's going on. There's so much coming at everybody. I think that less is more. And I even know for myself, I'll have a friend send me the record and say like, I'll see him. Hey, did you listen to how did you like the record? It's like I haven't listened to it yet, just because I haven't had the time. But I tried to chop that story up. So basically, uh, my brother, Bluebird, Holloway's, Jim Brown, had said like, "Hey man, I went and saw Dick Dale play last night. There's a club in North Hollywood called the Palomino, and he's like, you would love it. I thought about you, you would love it." And I was like, I was thinking of I was thinking of 50s surf rock, and I'm like, cool, yeah, I love that music. But he was like, no, it was punk, it was shredding, it was really good. And he's like, I saw some of your friends there, it was really good. So I was like, okay, I'll check it out. Within that time, one of the projects that I've been trying to do with my brother sort of imploded. And as bands often do, we were everyone just trying to get on the same page. We kind of broke up. I was really depressed. I had a friend that was a photographer. He wanted me to go with him to the NAMM show to assist him to kind of schlep his gear. And I was like, man, I don't want to fucking go to that place. It's depressing. It's just like, it's too much. I'm not in the right headspace for it. But he's like, come on, dude, let's go. We're going to shoot John Entwistle. You can meet him. Again, I was like, that sounds amazing, but I went, and on my break, I was walking around, um, kind of poking fun at people in my head, as I often do, just sarcastic shit. And I could hear this sound that was faint. And I don't know if you've ever been to one of those things, NAMM show, or one of those conventions. There's just thousands of booths and people everywhere, and it's a it's a fucking nightmare. It's like I mean, it would probably be cool to just do a room recording and put a big wash of reverb and delay on it and just make it like an ambient piece. It would probably sound really cool, but that's basically what it sounds like in my head when I'm in those places.
Yeah,
Anyways, I hear it, and as I'm getting closer, I'm like, I know what that is. I know what that sound is, and like, so I put my head up into this glass window, and Dick Dale, he was right there. I could feel the vibrations on the window, and I was like, holy fuck, there he is right there. So I kind of pushed my way in, and my brother was right. I was like, God damn. I was like, this dude is crushing. This guy is just, and I'd never been one of those people that was like, hey man, you should let me play drums for you. Hey, you know, like, hey, your boyfriend sucks. You should go out with me instead. That's never
yeah,
been my thing. And I had just finished this other thing. I was starting Bluebird. We were starting up, and we were just kind of getting it going, but I was still, it was in the very early stages. And so I met him and just said, "Hey man, if you ever need a drummer, I think that we would, you know, we'd make great music together." And he was a pretty intimidating dude. He was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Are you sober?" And I mean, I have a lot of friends that are in the program, NAAA, but I'm not sober, but I don't have that gene, so it's not hard for me to not drink for 3 months. So I was like, yeah, yeah, whatever, you know. And he was like, I'm always looking for new talent. And he's like, um, here, you can get my information, you know, in a second. So I called, um, I called his wife. I talked to him, and it was like, great, you want to come out in 2 days? And I was like, to where? And he's like, to 29 Palms. So it's like, okay, great, you know. Um, so I drove out there and rolled up, and as I told in the little short, like it was like a desert home overlooked the Mojave Desert. He had a parrot in the living room. There was white carpet everywhere, a black grand piano, a saxophone, a trumpet, like really, really cool vintage Fender gear everywhere. And he was in the kitchen like making lunch. He was like, "Yeah, just put a towel down so you don't get grease from your drum pedal on the white carpet." So I was like, "Okay," you know, and I was, I don't know, 25, 24. Again, I wasn't like a guy that was like a session dude or anything, but it's Dick Dale. So I was like, hey man, if anything, it's gonna be a good story. So he came in, and I told him, hey, I know who you are, obviously. I know what kind of, you know, your background, but I don't know your catalog. So I'm just letting you know I didn't really come prepared. I don't know. You can't, if you want to, you know, you're gonna, and he's like, doesn't matter. He's like, I'll know, you know, what's what. And so I was like, okay. I was like, you want to put that bird in another room? And he's like, oh no, I think his name was Petey. He's like, he likes it. The bird had no feathers. I was like, all right. And so he just drops into Miserloot, that opening lick, just staccato, double picking, and it was loud as fuck. And I was like, oh shit, here we go. I got a total adrenaline rush, and we just locked in, and um, we played for about 4 minutes, 3 minutes, and he just stood up and he was like, holy fuck. He's like, you're the drummer of my dreams. You fucking hit hard. You want to go to Europe? I was like, yeah, let's go. That sounds great, man. The win. He's like, next month. I was like, okay, yeah, let's go. Yeah. He
wow,
was yeah, he was incredible. He was also like he was deep on a lot of levels. He has crazy strong connection. I'd love to recount some of those stories sometime. For publicly, I mean, but he, you know, he told me story. He used to live with like large cats. He had I don't know if they were lions or tigers, but we had a lot of we would, you know, when we'd have breakfast on the road. I did before that. I did like a 2 week tour with him through the South. We played Mardi Gras, and we went through Texas and Florida in his motorhome. So we'd eat like at a Denny's in the morning, and I just wanted to hear the stories, but the stories that he had about his connection with the animals and stuff was very profound and really deep. He had this, yeah, this connection with nature, which a lot of people, I don't know if they knew or they didn't know, but yeah, he had some sort of outer body experiences with the cats and stuff that he told me, which I was like, he's on a deeper level. But he also, yeah, I remember the one thing that when I got the itinerary for that first tour, I was like, oh, cool, Peel session, John
Mm.
Peel. I was like, doesn't get any better than that, and um, I don't think Dick really knew who he was or, where his spot was in popular culture in the UK. But he almost didn't want to do it because they pay you like whatever the scale is or something. And you do a whole, you do
Right.
8 songs or something like that. And, he's just looking at it from a business level. And it almost didn't happen. But that we played the last track that we recorded was Third Stone from the Sun. And so the
Mm.
story is that, um, Hendrix hadn't done any instrumental tracks until that one. And in the track, he says, "And you'll never hear surf music again." And that was in reference to the fact that Dick he had cancer, and so it was rumored that he was gonna die. And he did have cancer. He had it several times in his life. He beat it, and he was totally badass. But so we were recording in the same studio that Hendrix Experience recorded, and again, it was one of those really cool moments. And I think Noel Redding called up. I think he wrote Ron, the bass player, a letter, and it's like, hey man, I heard the track, and it was
Whoa.
like, it brought me to tears. It was really cool. I remember being there at Jeff Beck. He came down or he called, but Dick he'd never toured Europe before. He didn't really tour that much. He would play one-offs. He didn't really tour a lot in
Right.
his heyday. But yeah,
That's
we came
cool that
back
you
and
got
did.
to have that like joint experience, considering
No,
he was such an experienced player, but this was something you were both kind of doing.
yeah, it was a new thing for him. I remember we came back and did Jules Holland a year, 2 years later or something. It was right around all the Pulp Fiction thing and all that shit was like kind of blowing up. But
Mm.
when we did Jules Holland, Clapton played and Dr. John played. All those dudes, they all wanted to like talk to him and rap out with him and stuff, for good reason. But yeah, it was cool. We played a show in Holland and Prince did one of his after shows there. I was at the Paradiso and yeah, Prince, wanted to meet him and shit. It's just it was cool. It's cool to see him, Dick Dale, sort of receive accolades from his peers or people that he probably influenced.
Yeah, definitely. That must have been really like, I think it's nice when those moments happen where people that have had a profound influence that maybe publicly
So
didn't get that like
yeah,
level.
I'll tell you one story though that I've told friends, but I've never talked about. And he would laugh now, but like Dick, he was really strict about no drinking, no drugs. He was straight. Nor would I ever really even consider. You couldn't keep up endurance wise with him unless you were like, there's no way. At least I couldn't. So we were in Amsterdam, and Ron, the bass player who played with Dick for years, Ron Eglett, we had this, and Dick, he knew. We were like, it's legal, weed's legal here, whatever. And I had this hash, and I was like, hey Ron, I have all this hash. What should I do with this? And he's like, just eat it. And I'm like, really? I'm like, what's that do? He's like, that's the same thing. We were kind of wasn't a private plane, but it was a small jet, and it was going from Antwerp or something like that, not into Heathrow, but to a smaller one. And then we were doing a show that night. It was around Christmas time, so I ate it. I didn't know, and we get into London, and we're driving in the cab to the gig, and it's Christmas time, and then I'm like, man, I think these fumes are coming in from this cab. I think I'm getting like sick or something. And then I was kind of a little bit dizzy, and then I saw tracers, these Christmas lights, and I said, "Hey, man," I'm like, "How long does it take that shit you came onto?" And he goes, "Oh, I peaked on the plane, dude. You didn't hear me? Like I was like tripping my balls off on the plane." I'm like, "Could it take this long?" And he goes, "Maybe." He's like, And by the time we got to the club, I was getting so high, I was freaking out. I was like, I wanted to tell him, Dick Dale, like, hey man, I didn't know that, this, I didn't do this. I felt, I was freaked out. So,
Yeah.
and Ron's kind of like old school hippie, hate Ashbury, San Francisco. He's got a very Frank Zappa vibe to him. And he's like, you'll be fine. He just kept saying, you'll be fine. So we do the sound check, and I'm getting more and more high. It's not subsiding, it's getting more intense. And I'm like, oh my fucking God. I'm like, this is going to be a fucking nightmare. The tour manager says, who wants to stay at the club and who wants to go back to the hotel? I'm like, I'm going back to the hotel. So we get to the hotel, and stupidly, I thought I could take like a bath or a shower to make it to wear off. And I was in the bathtub with the water dripping off of my head, looking at the droplets in the water, just like there was some BBC had some show on primates going, and I was just, they said, you have 2 hours. And it was literally like, okay, I'll be back in 2 hours. I was like, okay. I was like, what the fuck, man? And okay, we're going to the gig. I get to the gig, and uh my friends Allison and her brother, Allison and Jim Shaw, they're in a band called the Cranes. I know them through my brother. They lived in Portsmouth. So they wanted to see me play with Dick Dale. And they came down, and I came out and I said, I can't talk to you. I'm so high right now. My face is melting off. I'm freaking out. This is going to be a fucking train wreck. It was a huge club. It was sold out, and I'm like, this is going to be fucking awful. I was trying to debate, do I go tell Dick Dale like, hey man? And Ron the whole time kept saying like, you'll be fine, dude. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. So when we would every night Dick Dale would start playing off stage, and he would walk onto stage before we did. It was just the way he would take the stage. You'd hear his iconic sound, and he would play. So this time the first band finished, so I didn't tell anyone. I just went and sat down on the drum kit. So I'm in a packed club. I'm just sitting at the drum kit. I just have my hands on the drums, and I'm just trying to like talk myself down. And so I didn't go back to the dress. I just sat out there for like 10 minutes, and I'm looking at the balcony and shit. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going to fucking happen? And I see Dick out. He starts playing, and I can see him, and he looks, and he's like mousing me. He goes, the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, I just ignored him. I just was staring at him. And Ron was smiling. Ron was laughing. Hey, he was getting a kick out of it. And I felt awful. I was just like, oh, I don't want to let him down. I don't want to like be this guy. And he started playing, and I swear to God, I remember like one part of the show, and the next thing I remember is finishing the show, and Dick came up to me and said, you played incredible. He's like, I've never heard you play like that ever in your life. He's like, that's the best I've ever heard you play. And I was like, all right, man, cool. Like
What?
it was insane, but he like I just attribute it to, I feel like I just let go of all that other shit, and I was totally connecting to him on a musical level and a spiritual level. I remember just looking, because you just watch him from the back, and he'd kind of turn around at you and nod, or he had these different shoulder, if he wanted you to go faster or slower, he would move his shoulder a certain way. But yeah, that was like a pivotal night for me playing with him, because I was like, I felt like I had some gone through this portal and connected to him on his true level, even though I was just, yeah. I would never wish that upon anybody with, that
Yeah.
that fear. I was like freaked out. Yeah. And
That
and my friend Jim and Allison loved it. They said they were giddy the whole time, knowing how hammered I was. And they were like, look at him, dude. He's out of his mind right now, Yeah, that was
Did
awesome.
did you ever reveal to
I
Dick
didn't.
the
I would
source?
have. I would have told him, like he would have thought it was funny, he would have gotten a kick out of it later, I mean, clearly if I told him I wasn't, it wasn't intentional, it was a stupid thing to do. I should have just thrown it in the garbage, but no, I would have loved to have told him. I hope I get to meet him in another plane, and we can laugh about it.
Yeah, man. I mean, what a story. I feel like there's definitely that fit. Anyone that's ever like partaken knows that feeling of when it's like feels like it's just going up and up and up, and you like it will ever end. Am I ever going to be normal
It's
again?
Yeah, no, it's like, is it ever gonna end? I just felt really like I wanted to be professional, and I
Mm.
wanted to do right by him, and I didn't want to let him down, is basically, what was my biggest fear. Thank God I
Must
had my spirit guide, Ron Eglet, there to he just kept looking at me. He was just like smiling. He had this, I mean, yeah, it was just, yeah, it was wildness.
Oh man,
Yeah.
what a story! What an experience that must have been.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I'd love to hear you talk more about it. Maybe on another time.
sure.
Um, before we close out, I suppose I'd love to ask sort of like what's next for you in terms of Dark Brown or other projects. I mean, it always feels slightly wrong as a fan to ever ask someone after they've just, I think you've said it's taken 13 years to get American Instrument to be like
Uh, I
immediately like
mean,
what's next? But
man, it took me that long because it was finished for a long time, and then the pandemic, I lost both my folks back to back in the pandemic, and
oh
then
man, I'm sorry.
that's all right. It's cool. It's thank you. And then I just sort of almost just lost interest in it. I just sort of became you're just working on new stuff, and the I felt like I was letting all the people down that were nice enough to play on the album. There were so many people that took their time to play on it, and let me put their name on the album, and I felt like I had to do due diligence by literally like dusting off the hard drive and then doing all the social media and the content and video. I mean, I like doing the visuals and stuff like that, but as you know, I mean, you do it every day. It's a lot of work, and then you're just in it and working jobs, making music for other stuff to try to get your head in it. So it would have been done earlier. With that being said, I have enough for, enough material, for 10 more albums. But the in the immediate for music, I have another Dark Brown record that I've already started working on that I want to be kind of the opposite of this one. I want the pieces to still have um the sort of subconscious high thing, but I want them to be quicker to the point, more written from almost a song structure, a pop song, where there's a hook right at the beginning, but they're still loose and flowing, but that I want to keep the pieces of music condensed, and so I've already started working on that. I want that my goal is to make that one go really quick. And then I'm doing another a record right now. It's about halfway finished. I wanted to do that one in 30 days too, but it's all interpretations of like Eddie Van Halen pieces. So
Oh whoa.
it's like it'll be a covers album. But I read that Alex Van Halen book, and he's talking a lot about his relationship with his brother, and those guys are total virtuosos. I'm not, but they're talking about I could relate on the brother thing and playing at a young level, and I just really love their story. They're immigrants. Their mom's Indonesian. Their father's Dutch. They came here when they were 7 and 8 or something like that. It's a typical classic immigrant story. And again, it's ironic with the, you just think of them as American classic rock, but basically, they're Asian kids that are just
Right.
fucking crushing it and ruling the world, and it's ironic, when people, I won't get into it, but I just thought it was a really beautiful story. And so I started listening to some of the pieces of music and trying to take them out of the context from Sunset Strip or my memories of that music growing up and in America and having that kind of be a huge part of my youth. And so I'm basically I'm I'm hoping that my goal is to make a sort of an ethereal sounding album that's inspired by like Philip Glass, but that they're Van Halen pieces of music. But so basically, I'm just um, trying to allocate new instrumentation. I've slowed down a lot of the tempos. Um, yeah, I want it to be sort of unrecognizable, but if you're a fan, you might recognize a certain motif or a chord progression or something like that. But it's a way for me to be inspired to create something where I don't have the heaviness of that I'm trying to actually write the music. Yeah, those two things are kind of on the front burner right now.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Those sounds like yeah, two really interesting
Uh,
projects.
Again, too, because a lot of people, when you say Van Halen, it conjures up a certain, you think aesthetically, visually, or musically, or whatever. So, again, my goal is to, without sounding too, metaphysical, is really just to connect with Eddie on a spiritual level. And there's been a couple pieces like when I put it and allocate an oboe or something to it and slow it down, it's like I feel like he's in the room with me. I know that sounds really pretentious and really goofy, but it's like those pieces of music, um, they're just taking up another the energy is just moving around, and now it becomes that energy. And it's an homage to him and his brother, but just really just trying to do something to stay creative and have fun with it.
I love that. Yeah, no, I think that's such a cool idea, and it's taking inspiration from those sorts of things is, or inspiration comes from so many different places, right? And I think it's always cool when artists are able to be open about like where like going into those realms, because I think sometimes
Yeah.
people are hesitant to say like, oh, I'm kind of like reinterpreting such and such, as if it's like a, not as profound as like creating something originally. But I don't think personally don't believe that to be true at all. And also the yeah, interpreting those particular songs into that context. Yeah, I can't wait to hear what it sounds like. It's gonna be
Well, yeah, I
awesome.
mean, I have a lot of friends that are American that are like, yeah, I never got into that shit. People that are into funk and jazz and stuff, and it's like you should. It's like it's there's something in there for everybody, maybe not in the context that it was applied to, but yeah, should be fun.
All right. Thanks again to Brian Lee Brown for spending some time chatting with me. I really hope you take the time to listen to the American Instrument album. I'm going to link it all down below. And also, I'm going to link, as I've said, link to my newsletter. Sign up. You'll get access every week to the latest reviews that I'm doing. You'll be sent straight away the review to American Instrument, and I think you'll really like it. And if you can be asked to do all that, you may as well subscribe to the channel, stick around, share some thoughts, show some love, or just hold some abuse in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video. All right, take care, mate. Cheers. Bye.